A successful young yuppie travels to an isolated wellness center in the Swiss Alps, where visitors are subjected to mysterious water-based treatments. Hi there. Today we're going to explore the plot of the 2016 film A Cure for Wellness. The film opens with a businessman working alone in a dark office late at night. Suddenly, an intense chest pain strikes him. He tries to calm himself and takes a sip of water from the cooler, but the pain only gets worse. He collapses on the floor and dies from a heart attack. On the wall above him, a framed photo of his smiling face, Employee of the Year, stares indifferently over the tragedy. A train races through the breathtaking landscapes of the Alpine mountains. On board is the young financial analyst Lockhart. Traveling on a business mission, he chews nicotine gum and never lets go of his phone. Business and money always come first. Suddenly, a flashback. Lockhart is being transferred to the company's main office. Management respects him and his confidence is high. But in the middle of a board meeting, the directors show him a strange letter from the company's CEO, Mr. Pembroke. Pembroke has traveled to a wellness center in Switzerland and sent a note from there announcing that he is leaving business forever. The problem is that his signature is urgently needed in order to finalize a major deal. Lockhart is given a chance. Travel to the Swiss sanitarium, find Pembroke, and bring him back to New York. If he fails, he will be held responsible for previous financial irregularities and could face prison. Before leaving, Lockhart visits his mother in a nursing home. She gives him a small hand-carved ballerina figurine and says goodbye, as if she will never see him again. The car winds its way up a narrow mountain road toward the old sanatorium that sits high above a small village. Along the way, the driver tells a disturbing legend. Once there stood a castle owned by a local baron who intended to marry his own sister. The outraged villagers set the castle on fire, with the baron still inside. When they arrive at the grounds, Lockhart notices elderly patients in white gowns slowly walking around in the sunshine. At the reception desk, he is informed that there are no visits allowed today. He asks to speak with the administrator, and while waiting, he tries to call the New York office. But there is no signal. Outside, he notices a ventilation window in the wall of an old chapel leading down into a basement. The administrator finally arrives and offers him a glass of the miraculous alpine water. He recommends that Lockhart return in the evening once Mr. Pembroke's procedures are finished. With no other choice, Lockhart turns back toward the car and suddenly notices a girl in a blue dress standing on top of the old fortification wall. On the way back to the car, a deer runs directly into the road and crashes into the vehicle. The impact is so strong that the car is thrown off the road. Lockhart loses consciousness. He wakes up in a room inside the sanitarium, with one leg in a cast. Dr. Vollmer greets him and explains that the company has already been informed about the accident and that Lockhart must stay a few days to recover. The most important thing, the doctor says, is to drink as much water as possible. Standing by the window, the young man watches the workers bricking up the same chapel window he saw before. He empties a glass of water and notices a tiny black insect crawling on the inside of the glass. Lockhart begins to explore the building and observes how patients undergo strange hydrotherapy sessions under the supervision of the staff. Soon he himself is invited to the steam room. Inside the thick steam, Lockhart suddenly realizes there is no exit behind him. He is trapped in a sealed room with no way out. A moment later, at the end of a distant corridor, the silhouette of a deer appears. Lockhart follows it and unexpectedly finds Pembroke himself. The old man calmly explains that he has no intention of returning to the city or to business. He needs to purify himself. He even mentions Lockhart's father, reminding him that they once worked together before Lockhart's father walked away. Then, quite unexpectedly, Pembroke changes his mind and agrees to come back home, but only for a few days. Lockhart goes back to the reception and asks them to call a taxi. While waiting outside, he is approached by Mrs. Watkins, an elderly woman who collects stories and legends about the place. A moment later, Lockhart once again notices the girl in the blue dress. Her name is Hannah, and she is considered a special patient of the sanatorium. The young man admits that he will soon leave this place, but Hannah sincerely asks why anyone would leave such a beautiful environment. Her words and the landscape around them make Lockhart question everything for a moment. When he returns to the main building, Pembroke is no longer in the dining hall, where other patients are having lunch under the careful watch of Dr. Vollmer. The doctor simply says that after yesterday's discussion, Pembroke began to feel worse, and he was taken to a set of special procedures. Lockhart becomes agitated and starts shouting for answers, and suddenly collapses. Dr. Vollmer examines him in the office and calmly explains that even at his young age, his body already needs sensitive rehabilitation. Lockhart agrees to begin the treatment, but once the doctor leaves the room, he secretly steals Pembroke's medical file. Soon after, he is placed inside a sensory deprivation tank. The attendant warns him that the absence of external stimulation can sometimes cause hallucinations. While floating inside the warm liquid, Lockhart at first sees pleasant memories from childhood, until a swarm of eels appears in the darkness and surrounds him. He bangs against the glass trying to call the attendant, but the man does not hear him. A memory flashes through his mind. His father once parked the car on a bridge, stepped out into the cold air, and jumped over the railing into the abyss below. Lockhart is pulled out of the tank in time. A nurse resuscitates him. The capsule is opened, and there are no eels inside at all. That evening, back in his room, Lockhart studies Pembroke's medical history and notices several strange details related to the jaw and the teeth. He is suddenly distracted by an odd sound coming from the bathroom. The handle on the toilet tank keeps moving by itself. When he gets closer, he sees one of the staff members rolling a covered stretcher in the direction of the old chapel. The next morning, he once again meets Mrs. Watkins. She tells him that the villagers burned down the Baron's castle because he was conducting medical experiments there, kidnapping locals for his research. Lockhart suggests that the Baron was looking for a cure, perhaps for his own wife. At that moment, the orderlies arrive and take Mrs. Watkins away for her procedure. The young man tries to reach the tower, but one of the workers quickly blocks his way and orders him to leave. Seeing Hannah, he walks up to her and asks if she can take him down to the village on her bicycle. In exchange, he gives her the small ballerina figurine, the same one his mother had given him before her death. Together they ride down the mountain and eventually reach a quiet old village. Hannah remains in a small pub while Lockhart crosses the street and visits a veterinarian to ask about Pembroke's medical results. The answer is disturbing. Although the patients drink water constantly, the loss of their teeth is actually caused by extremely severe dehydration. Back at the pub, Lockhart calls the New York office and learns that no one had ever been informed about his accident. He wants to discuss the situation with Hannah, but sees a local man harassing her. A fight breaks out and is suddenly stopped by the appearance of Dr. Vollmer, who calmly takes both runaways back to the sanatorium. In Hannah's room, they almost begin to argue. She holds her stomach, but the doctor tells her that everything will be fine soon and that she is getting better. That night, Lockhart is haunted by a nightmare. He sees Hannah lying in a bathtub completely filled with living eels. He wakes up in a cold sweat and notices one of the workers rolling an empty stretcher out of the basement. Standing in front of the mirror, the young man feels that one of his own teeth is loose, and it simply falls out. He runs to the reception desk to report it, but when the nurse steps away, Lockhart quickly searches through the treatment list and discovers the exact location of Pembroke, the transfusion wing. He sneaks his way there, trying not to be seen by any of the staff. Next to the elevator stands a white covered stretcher with a body beneath it. Suddenly, the old man on the stretcher opens his eyes and starts screaming loudly. The orderlies rush over to check on him, and Lockhart quietly slips into the elevator and rides it down to the lower level. In the underground tunnels, he finds several rooms filled with iron pressure chambers. In the next room, Mrs. Watkins lies motionless on a stretcher. With a trembling voice, she tells him that she left those clues for him, and then reveals a dreadful truth. The Baroness was pregnant. Under the skin on her neck and arms, something is moving. Parasites. Horrified, Lockhart steps back. In one of the glass tanks filled with liquid, he sees Pembroke inside. He tries to break the glass, but it does not shatter. He runs up the stairwell, only to come face to face with several orderlies and Dr. Vollmer. They take him to the medical room, saying they need to examine what is happening with the tooth. Lockhart is strapped down in a dentist's chair. Metal clamps are placed in his mouth and a drill moves toward his front tooth. Summoning all of his remaining strength, he manages to break free. He runs out of the room and out of the building and jumps into the same car that has just arrived with another patient, begging the driver to get him out of there immediately. They arrive at a police station, where Lockhart reports the illegal experiments taking place in the sanatorium. But as soon as the officer steps into the hallway, it becomes clear that he is already familiar with the local treatment. On a shelf inside the closet stands the same blue bottle containing the healing liquid. A moment later, Dr. Vollmer walks into the office and calmly introduces Lockhart as an unstable patient, suffering from hallucinations and violent outbursts. Immediately after, Pembroke appears and confirms that the young man threatened him. The fact that the old CEO is not only alive, but acting completely normally, pushes Lockhart to the edge. For a moment, he no longer knows whether he is sane or not. The next morning, he is back at the sanatorium. Sitting alone with Mrs. Watkins' notes, he hears a familiar sound, the toilet handle rattling again. He lifts the lid and sees hundreds of eels writhing inside, and then within seconds they disappear into the drain. He pulls the toilet out of the floor and checks the pipes, but finds no trace of anything. Lockhart then writes a letter to the company board, almost identical to Pembroke's, as if he has decided to stay voluntarily. After that, he goes through several treatments, but eventually smashes the glass of water and uses a shard to cut off the cast on his leg. The leg is perfectly fine. It had never been broken. It was only a trick to keep him inside the facility. He grabs a shovel and heads down into the basement. Deep beneath the sanatorium lies a dark underground lake and an old laboratory. Inside are dozens of jars filled with preserved eels, stacks of medical journals, and a small altar with a portrait of the Baroness, who looks almost exactly like a slightly older version of Hannah. Going even deeper, Lockhart finds a stretcher with a body under a white sheet. Mrs. Watkins. Suddenly, a worker appears. Lockhart hides and sees the man throw the body into the underwater lake, where eels immediately swarm over it. Lockhart and the worker get into a brutal fight. At the same time, frightened, Hannah goes to the dining hall looking for Dr. Vollmer. When he sees her, he smiles. Just then, Lockhart bursts in and orders him to let Hannah go. The doctor tries to calm the patients, but Lockhart shouts that they are all being lied to, that they are nothing but filters for the water, being poisoned and used. The elderly patients stand up, but not in support. Instead, they grab Lockhart and take him to the transfusion wing. He is locked inside a pressure chamber. Dr. Vollmer explains calmly that the water from the underground lake allows the eels to live 10 times longer than normal. But for humans, the water is lethal unless it passes through a filter first. And the filters are the patients. Their bodies are used to extract the blue elixir that gives the staff endless longevity. Later, the doctor tells Hannah that she has finally become a woman. That night, the sanatorium holds a wedding ceremony. Hannah is taken to the underground lake, into the laboratory, where an altar and a bed are waiting. Hannah refuses to comply. Vollmer ties her down. She fights back and hits him, and the skin on his forehead begins to peel off. At that moment, Lockhart stares at the ballerina figurine and breaks out of his delirium. He remembers Mrs. Watkins' words, rushes to the administrator's office, and smashes a glass frame holding an old photograph from a century ago, taken during the sanatorium's construction. On the photo, a man with a bandaged head is holding the hand of a small girl in a light dress. Everything becomes clear in an instant. Dr. Vollmer is actually the Baron himself, the one who discovered the longevity elixir, and Hannah is his daughter. Lockhart runs back into the underground laboratory and begins spilling fuel everywhere. The Baron tries to stop him and even removes the leather mask covering his face, revealing a horribly burned, twisted visage. But Lockhart manages to set the room on fire. The flames quickly spread. Sparks enter the ventilation system and ignite the curtains in the main hall, where the medical staff are still celebrating the wedding. Old-fashioned music plays as doctors and patients dance in circles, completely unaware of the disaster. The fire engulfs the walls, the floor, the ceiling. Panic finally erupts. In the basement, a fierce fight breaks out. The deformed Baron attempts to drown Lockhart in the pool of eels. The young man nearly loses consciousness until Hannah appears. With all her strength, she strikes the Baron in the face with a shovel. He falls into the water, and the eels instantly swarm over him. Lockhart and Hannah climb back to the surface. They stand silently in the courtyard, watching the sanatorium burn to the ground. Somewhere inside the collapsing building, the music continues playing. The patients keep dancing among the flames. Without looking back, the young man and the girl leave the grounds. They get on a bicycle and start riding down the winding mountain road. At one of the turns, they crash directly into a black car. Inside sit the members of the company's board of directors, the same people who sent Lockhart on this mission. Shocked, they demand an explanation and order him to return to New York immediately. But Lockhart is no longer the same. He stares at them without saying a word, then gets back on the bicycle together with Hannah, this 200-year-old girl, and rides away toward an unknown future, smiling as if he is finally alive for the very first time. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this recap, give it a like, leave a comment, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel.